We step this week into the second chapter of the New Testament book of James. Already it's become clear to us that James is a writer who cares about deeds as much as about beliefs. He's consistently committed that Christians must be practice what you preach individuals. As we heard him say last week, let us be doers of the word and not hearers only. That theme is continued in this chapter. Today we'll consider just the first 13 verses of chapter 2. In those verses, James says a couple of things. First, how we choose our friends speaks volumes about who we are as Christians. The first 7 verses are about our inclination to befriend people who can do something for us and to shun people who need us to do something for them. He writes of our buddying up to people, in his words, with gold rings and fine clothing, while, again in his words, we dishonor the poor. In short, we befriend those who can do something for us and ignore those who cannot. And that reveals that we operate by an it's all about me philosophy of life. One of the dearest men I've ever known was for 6 years a high-level administrator with a national Christian denomination. He told me that during those years he could barely walk across a hall at a church meeting without being stopped and surrounded by a host of clergy who were his friends. But, he said to me, then came the day when I left that position and became pastor of a local church again. I remember the first denominational meeting I attended in that capacity as a pastor. I could literally spend the whole day among other clergy and rarely even hear my name called. And then with a note in his voice bordering on pathos, he said, how foolish I was. I really thought they wanted my friendship. As it turns out, they just wanted my influence. Think about that in relation to the friends you choose at school, at work, in the neighborhood, even in the church. Are those choices based on our love for people, our willingness to be there for and to help people, or are they based on what we think those people can do for us? In the next 6 verses, James talks about sin and how we tend to categorize it. The word sin comes from a Greek word, hamartia, and it simply is a word used in archery to mean missing the mark. We sometimes think, well, sure, I missed the mark in little ways, but I'm not as bad as he is. I'm not as immoral as she is. Mine are just baby sins. Yours are major league. What does James say about that? He writes, whoever keeps the whole law but fails in one point has become guilty of it all. If you break one of the commandments but do not break the others, you have still become a transgressor of the law. In other words, he was simply saying that missing the mark is missing the mark. And none of us should be arrogant about our shortcomings and judgmental about the shortcomings of others. There's so much good in the worst of us and so much bad in the best of us that it ill behooves any of us to talk about the rest of us. That's what he was saying, that until we are perfect, we really need to be a little more patient with the imperfections of our neighbors. Okay, think about these 2 questions. What qualities do you look for, and should you look for, in a friend? And why do we make mistakes, but others commit sins? I'll see you next week.